How did you leave that cult? That is one of the questions that people tend to ask former cult members. For some people, it happened naturally. In fact, many left the cult after a certain period of time. It could take a few years or even longer, but they left eventually. It all started with a realization. The story differs depending on how they dealt with that realization. Leaving a cult is not easy because of the underlying dynamic and belief that there is no valid reason to leave since the cult is living the truth. Hassan 1985 states, "There is never a legitimate reason for leaving. Members are told that the only reasons why people leave are weakness, insanity, temptation, brainwashing by deprogrammers, pride, and sin." Hello, Zep here. Welcome back. In today's episode, we'll look at some of the reasons why people decided to leave their cults, particularly what actually led them to that very specific moment where they knew they had to leave. One of the biggest factors that enabled the decision to leave is exposure to the real world. It helps them reconnect with the life they once had. It reminds them of what it means to live in a world where possibilities are not so limited and they are actually free to live their many own truths. For people who grew up in cults, they were drawn to the freedom that the real world offers, where they are free to explore their very own paths and where they can actually live. People think that those of us who grew up in cults will be these timid people who are scared of everything, but from my experience, kids who come out want to do everything. I got friends who are motorcycling across the Sahara. I got friends who do 13 festivals in a year. They do all these amazing math things because they spent their childhoods being told they couldn't do anything. Let's go back to Betsy's story in the previous episode. Born into a cult, it was always a part of her life. She first became aware things weren't quite right when she was put in end-time teen camps, where she was hurt mentally and physically. And the turning point was when she met a journalist from The Guardian. The encounter had a strong impact on her, opened up her eyes to many possibilities of a life outside of the cult. She thought, well, what if he's right? What if they're wrong? She started to sneak out to hang with local kids and was shown what the real world really looked like. For other people, they kind of realized that something off at some points, but they couldn't come to terms with the realization that they chose the wrong path. So it took them a long time to confront with their denial. And denial is such a powerful thing. It kept them in the cults for many years until things went really bad, and they had to come to terms with the realization that the whole thing was a toxic relationship. Only then they allow themselves to accept the option to leave. So basically, it's a natural progression of cult life. After a while, people started to see things going wrong, and they realized that, well, this was not what I signed up for in the first place, so they left. For many former members, the rationale at the time was they were not in a cult. In fact, a cult was not something that they would imagine they associated with. They were doing a thing, they were in a great community, a good thing that can help them grow, that bring goodness to the world, and they believed it with all their hearts. And belief is so powerful that it kept them in check for many years. So sometimes they got a little help from the outside world to help them see the truth. He provided me with some information and he told me that don't show it to anybody, just read it yourself. And this information was testimonies, correspondence of former evangelists, current leaders to the top leader of the movement, and almost all the doubt all the critics, all the suffering that we were talking about. It was confirmed. They got me just finding stuff out for myself instead of loading more doctrine on me. They said, search it out for yourself. We do believe this, that, and the other, but you check it out yourself and come to your conclusions. When members leave a cult, they walk away with a really big impact from the cult on their well-being, physically, mentally, and socially. So we can explore it in the next episode, but it's gonna be some time from now since I find it a bit exhausting reading up too much about cult. So I'm gonna introduce some new topics to refresh the channel. Stay tuned. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me. See you in the next video. Cheers.